When Kevin Stefanski finally admitted he made a mistake starting Dillon Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders, the entire NFL seemed to freeze for a moment. It wasn't just a simple confession from a coach. It felt like someone had cracked open a door the Browns had been trying to keep shut for months. Fans didn't just react, they erupted. Analysts went into overdrive, and inside the organization, people who'd been whispering their frustrations suddenly felt validated. This wasn't the kind of admission a coach makes unless the pressure has reached a breaking point, and the second those words left his mouth, everything surrounding the Browns' quarterback situation shifted. What was once brushed off as a harmless competition now looked like the center of a story filled with hesitation, mixed loyalty, and decisions that didn't add up. And even though Stefanski said the words out loud, no one could shake the feeling that this revelation was only the beginning of something much bigger brewing behind the scenes. From the moment Dillon Gabriel was named the starter, something felt off. Fans didn't need analytics or film breakdowns to see the cracks forming. Gabriel's preseason rhythm was shaky, his timing felt rushed, and his confidence seemed to sway with every snap. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders had been turning heads with effortless poise, controlled arm strength, and a presence that made veterans take notice. Yet when the depth chart dropped, the decision wasn't even close. Stefanski planted his flag behind Gabriel, ignoring every sign pointing the other way. For many, it wasn't just surprising, it was baffling. The Browns had a young quarterback with momentum, swagger, and the kind of leadership spark that's hard to teach, and yet he was pushed aside before he even had a chance to breathe. Analysts questioned the logic, fans questioned the honesty, and insiders quietly wondered whether there was more to the decision than anyone was saying. And as the season kicked off, people started realizing this choice wasn't just a gamble, it was the first domino in a chain reaction the Browns were completely unprepared for. It didn't take long for the cracks in Gabriel's game to grow into full-blown concerns. Week after week, his passes floated late, drives stalled, and turnovers started piling up at the worst possible moments. What made it worse was the way the energy on the field changed whenever he stepped into the huddle. Players looked tense, the rhythm felt forced, and the offense moved like it was dragging something heavy behind it. Inside the locker room, the whispers began early. Rumors suggested veterans were quietly losing confidence, noticing how Gabriel's decision-making created chaos instead of momentum. And when he brushed off criticism by calling Shedeur an entertainer, that comment didn't just land badly, it fractured whatever goodwill he had left. Suddenly, the team wasn't just struggling, it was divided. The contrast between Gabriel's inconsistency and Sanders' calm, collected presence became impossible to ignore. And as frustration built, one question kept echoing through the halls of the Browns facility. How long could this situation last before it boiled over?
From the shadows while the team struggled in plain sight. And with every week that passed, the pressure on Stefanski to explain the decision only grew stronger. The moment the Browns announced that Sanders was dealing with an injury, the internet practically exploded. It wasn't the announcement itself that caused chaos, it was the timing. Sanders had looked sharp, energetic, and completely unbothered during practices just days earlier, which made fans question how an issue suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Almost immediately, social media was flooded with theories, and sports talk shows jumped on the story. Some personalities, including Stephen A. Smith, openly wondered whether the injury explanation was entirely accurate, while others suggested it might have been a misunderstanding or miscommunication inside the organization. None of these claims were ever confirmed, but the speculation alone sparked a wave of distrust that spread fast. Fans felt like they weren't getting the full story, and the idea that Sanders might have been kept out for reasons unrelated to his health only fueled more frustration. And as the rumors grew louder, it became clear that the team's attempt to calm the situation had done the opposite. It poured gasoline on a fire that was already burning out of control. When Stefanski finally acknowledged that choosing Gabriel over Sanders was a mistake, it didn't feel like a routine press moment. It felt like a shockwave. Coaches rarely admit misjudgments publicly, especially ones tied directly to the most scrutinized position in football. The second his words hit social media, reactions poured in from every corner of the league. Analysts dissected the statement frame by frame, fans replayed the clip like it was breaking news, and insiders claimed the admission confirmed what many had suspected for weeks. The coaching staff had misread the situation from the start. For the players, the confession reportedly brought a strange mix of relief and unease. On one hand, it validated the growing belief that Sanders deserved a real shot. On the other, it raised uncomfortable questions about how long the team had been following a plan that wasn't working. Even those who supported Stefanski couldn't ignore the fact that the acknowledgement came only after the pressure became impossible to deflect. And with that single statement, the conversation shifted from, "Did he make the right choice?" to, "Why did it take so long to say this out loud?" The fallout didn't stop there. The admission cracked open every part of the Browns' decision-making process. Fans began digging through old interviews, searching for clues about what the staff really thought of Sanders. Analysts started debating whether the delay had cost the team key games. And inside the building, the atmosphere reportedly grew tense as players wondered what this meant for the rest of the season. Stefanski might have hoped that being honest would calm the noise, but instead it raised expectations. Admitting the mistake was one thing, fixing it would be another. Suddenly, the spotlight wasn't just on the quarterback room, it was on Stefanski himself. Because now the entire league was watching to see if he had the courage to follow his words with action. And without realizing it, that single admission put him on the clock. And then came the moment that shifted the entire locker room dynamic. After Gabriel's dismissive comment calling Sanders an entertainer, several players reportedly felt the divide widen even further. It wasn't just about a comment, it was about what the comment represented. The offense needed unity, but instead it was drifting into separate camps. Some supported Gabriel out of loyalty, while others quietly believed Sanders was the spark they were missing. Sanders himself stayed composed, never firing back or creating drama, which only strengthened the respect teammates had for him. Even so, the weight of the situation was becoming impossible to ignore. Every player could feel the tension growing, like pressure building under a sealed lid. The breaking point came when the team realized that the indecision wasn't just hurting their performance, it was affecting their belief in the system. Players thrive on trust. They need to believe the coaching staff sees what they see, feels what they feel, and will act when the moment calls for it. But with every week that passed, that confidence eroded just a little more. Rumors suggest that some players were privately questioning whether the staff was willing to make tough decisions for the good of the team. And once that kind of doubt creeps into a locker room, it spreads faster than anyone expects. Morale doesn't collapse all at once, it frays piece by piece. By the time Stefanski finally admitted the initial mistake, many inside the organization were already wondering if the damage had gone too far. And suddenly the Browns weren't just fighting opponents on the field, they were fighting the weight of their own internal divide. By the time the chants for Sanders began echoing through the stadium, it was obvious the situation had reached a point where no amount of silence or explanation could calm the storm. Fans weren't just hoping for a change, they were demanding it with a level of urgency the Browns hadn't felt in years. And behind the scenes, the pressure was building in ways that could no longer be pushed aside. Rumors began swirling that members of the front office were growing uneasy, watching valuable weeks slip by while a potential franchise quarterback waited untouched on the sidelines. Even if these reports were only speculation, the shift in public sentiment was undeniable. Every incomplete pass from Gabriel was met with groans, and every glimpse of Sanders on the bench reminded people of what the team might be wasting. The stakes surrounding this decision grew heavier with each passing game. Sanders wasn't just another young quarterback, he represented the possibility of a new direction, a reset, a chance to inject life back into a franchise that had been stuck in a loop of near misses and frustration. His calm presence, the way teammates seemed to respond when he spoke, and his ability to stay composed under pressure all hinted at a player who could reshape the energy of the entire offense. Meanwhile, the longer Gabriel stayed in the starting role, the clearer it became that the team's ceiling had lowered. Drives stalled, momentum died quickly, and the crowd's patience thinned to almost nothing. All the while, Sanders remained ready, watching the season unfold from the sideline like a passenger instead of the spark he could have been. And now, the Browns find themselves caught between two paths. one grounded in loyalty and hesitation, and the other bound to a future waiting to be unlocked. Stefanski's admission didn't close this chapter. It opened a new one, where every choice is magnified and every misstep is judged twice as harshly. The franchise can't ignore the shift in energy any longer. Fans feel it, players feel it, even the media, who once treated the situation like a simple roster discussion, now talks about it as a pivotal moment for the organization's identity. And as the pressure builds, the question becomes harder for Stefanski to avoid. How much longer can Sanders remain on the sideline before the opportunity slips away completely? Because once a franchise lets a moment like this pass, it doesn't come back. And Cleveland knows exactly what it feels like to run out of chances.
As the Browns stand on the edge of a moment that could redefine everything, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The next decision Kevin Stefanski makes will shape far more than a single season. His admission cracked open a reality the franchise can't walk away from anymore. Sanders isn't just a name on a depth chart. He's become the symbol of the direction Cleveland could choose to take. A fresh start, a renewed identity, a chance to shake off the weight of hesitation and finally lean into a player the entire city has been waiting to see unleashed. Gabriel, meanwhile, represents the past few months of uncertainty, loyalty, and tough lessons. And the longer this limbo continues, the harder it becomes for the team to find its rhythm again. Every fan can feel the urgency now. The atmosphere around the Browns is thick with expectation, and the team knows it. Players aren't just competing for wins, they're fighting for clarity, unity, and belief in the path forward. That's what makes this moment so defining. Stefanski's next move will either restore confidence or deepen the doubts that have already taken root. And it's not just about choosing a starter, it's about proving that leadership means recognizing when it's time to move forward, even if it means letting go of an earlier choice. Because in the NFL, hesitation can derail a season before anyone realizes what happened. What makes everything so compelling is how quickly the narrative can shift. If Sanders steps onto the field and brings the spark fans believe he has, the entire franchise could feel the impact immediately. A burst of energy, a surge of confidence, a sign that the Browns are ready to embrace the future instead of holding on to the past. But if Stefanski continues down the same road, if he clings to what isn't working, the consequences could ripple far beyond this season. Fan trust could fade, locker room morale could fracture even further, and Stefanski's own legacy could be defined not by the games he won, but by the opportunity he hesitated to seize. Now the Browns face a decision that could rewrite their trajectory. The window is open, but it won't stay open forever. Sanders is ready, the fans are waiting, and the franchise is standing at a crossroads that will either revive its momentum or solidify its struggles. What comes next isn't just a roster change, it's a turning point, the type of moment people look back on and say, that's where everything shifted. Whether the Browns rise from this chaos or remain trapped in it depends on what happens next. And with the pressure mounting and the stakes at their highest, one thing is clear: Cleveland can't afford to get this decision wrong again.